Our poem is After Blenheim, and the poet is Robert Southey. He is a nature poet, and the specific qualities of a nature poet is that he specifies his emotions, ideal situations, the beauty, and so is the case with After Blenheim. Robert Southey has emphasized on the ideal situation that there should be no war. This is an anti-war poem. In this poem, the poet criticizes the war and with a powerful language. Poet has been successful in establishing that peaceful solutions to the problem should be made, because the common man do not really understand why are wars for, because the main character, one of the main character of this poem, the Caspar, the grandfather, do not understand why was the great victory of Blenheim was there. So why did the two parties fought? So he had actually no answer to his grandchildren. So the poet tries to narrate with the simple communication between grandfather and the grandchildren that the common man is indoctrinated, doesn't know why war happens, he has no answer. But common man's brain has been washed by the state propaganda. And this anti-war poem echoes with the famous quote of Wilfred Owen's, "The Pity of War." So we'll understand this poem as an anti-war poem, and it's a narration between a grandfather and the grandchildren. So, and this poem is actually a contrasting poem. It is full of ironies. Every third line is an irony. Irony is a contrasting situation where two situations are there in which there is nothing common. So I'll start the poem and a little about this Battle of Blenheim. It occurred in 1704 in the town of Bavaria between England and France, and the battle was won by England. Duke of Marlborough, Prince Eugene, these were the famous victors. So, but this victory has its devastating effect that has been characterized, symbolized in this poem very properly. So let us start with After Blenheim. So, and one more thing I want to discuss, that there are three main characters, one Caspar and two grandchildren, Wilhelmine the daughter and Peterkin the son. So the setting of the poem is such, it's very peaceful. So I will start with a peaceful setting. It was summer evening, old Caspar work was done. He was sitting in the sun, and by him sported on the green his little grandchild Wilhelmine. So this is rather a peaceful setting. Old man Caspar is sitting in a summer evening taking a sun bath, and his work is being completed, and nearby where he was sitting, near his cottage, there is a green ground where his granddaughter Wilhelmine is playing. So it's a very peaceful setting. And now see, just in the next stanza, a contrast will come. So I'll make out the next stanza. She saw her brother Peterkin. So Peterkin was the brother of Wilhelmine, and this Caspar is the grandfather. Roll something large and round. Peterkin was rolling something that was very large and round in shape. In playing beside the rivulet is a stream. In playing there had found, he came to ask what he had found that was so large, so smooth and so round. Now, actually that boy has discovered a human skull, but let us see the plot. It is a peaceful situation, and in this peaceful situation, dreadful human skull came in between. And who is holding that human skull? a little boy, innocent boy, who is unaware of the fact that this is a human skull. So, he takes that human skull, and the poet do not want to expose it to the audience that the Peterkin has got the human skull. He has not exposed it in the second stanza, that actually human skull has been discovered by Peterkin. So, an innocent boy who is unaware what is this, and in the such silent plot he gets a human skull and takes it to the grandfather, which he found near a rivulet, and then he wanted to ask to the grandfather what thing he has found that is so smooth and so round. So, there is an ironical situation. The plot is peaceful and human skull has been found, and by whom it has been found? Not by a matured man, by an innocent child who is unable to understand what he has found. So, the poem starts with an irony. Old Caspar took it from the boy who stood expectant by. So, old Caspar, the grandfather, took it from the child, and child was standing as expectant. So, now the second irony starts. The child thinks that his grandfather is a very wise man. He will tell what is this. So, he is standing as expectant, and then the old man shook his head. So, old man moved his head, and with a natural sigh and with a painful grief, obviously, "'Tis some poor fellow's skull," said he, "who fell in the great victory." So, this is a skull of some poor soldier who died in that great victory. So, now it has been exposed that the skull has been found, and that was a person who died in that great victory. So, from that peaceful situation by such innocent boy, the skull is being carried, and now the grandfather exposes that this is a skull, this is a war victim, this is somebody who died in a war, the famous battle of Blenheim. So, he tells his grandchildren, Wilhelm and Peterkin, that this is actually the skull of a soldier. Now, he tells to his children, because it is a narrative, it is a communication between the children and the grandfather, and the writer wants to expose everything about the war, about the pity of war, about the uselessness of war by this narration only. So, now he says, "I find them in the garden, for there are many hereabout." So, now he tells his grandchildren that I found them in the garden, for there are many hereabout, for often when I go to plough, the ploughshare turns them out. So, now he tells to his grandchildren that I often find these type of a skull. Whenever I go to plough, the ploughshare turns them out. So, whenever I go to the ground, ploughshare takes a skull out. Now, again there is an irony, there is a contrasting situation, because the plough and the ploughshare and the field are considered as fertile. They are for some nourishment, and what nourishment can they give if they are full of dead bodies and the skulls? So, the field is full of a skull which is being ploughed. So, again the writer is trying to point out the dreadfulness of the war, that ploughing something is for the fertility of the and for getting the nutrition, for getting the nourishment. So, what nourishment one can get from the skulls and the dead bodies, because there are many dead bodies buried over there who fell in that great battle. So, again there is a contrast between the situations. The person who is ploughing and dead bodies he is ploughing the dead bodies actually. So, again the writer is being able to create an irony, the poet. "For many thousand men," said he, "who slain in that great victory." So, again he said that many thousand men who were killed in that battle, in that great victory, I used to find the skulls of those great those people when I plough the ground. So, there is again a contrasting situation and an irony, as I said. Now, tell me what was all about. Now, the children became curious that what was that victory all about, that was so great, what happened? Young Peterkin, he cried, and there Wilhelmine looks up. So, Peterkin cried, so what was that all about? And Wilhelmine started looking up. Now, tell me all about the war. and what they fought each other for. So, now tell me about the war and what was the reason for fighting the war. So, the questions are being raised by the innocent grandchildren. Now, let us see what does the grandfather answers. Actually, he has no proper reason. He just starts repeating, it was a great victory, it was a great victory, but he is unable to answer why it was a great victory. So, when the question was being put to him, he said, it was the English, Caspar said, the grandfather said, it was the English who put the French to rout. So, English and French, they fought the battle and the French were outrooted. The battle was being won by the English. But what they fought for each other, I could not well make out. Now, Caspar said, the English routed the French, I know it very well, but why they fought, I have no answer. So, the old Caspar, the poet has emphasized, he is an old man are considered to be wise. So, he is a wise man, he has the wisdom of age, but still that, after still he is not able to tell his grandchildren that why did they fought for, he did not have any reason. So, here the poet want to emphasize that state propaganda is such powerful that the brain of the common man is washed out, and they believe in unreasonable things also. Whatever the state says, that is right. But everybody says, quoth he, said he. Everybody says that was a great victory. That was a great victory. So, he said, I do not know why they fought, but I have heard from the people that was great victory. So, he tell to his grandchildren in this way, but the children are of young mind, they were not satisfied with the answer. Caspar started telling about his own sufferings from the war. So, we have to notice Caspar family also suffered from this war, that is being explained in the next stanza. My father lived at Blenheim then. So, Caspar told that his father used to live at Blenheim at that time. Yon is yonder. So, little stream hard by. So, a distant place from the stream, my father used to live there, and when this battle occurred, they burned his dwelling. So, dwelling is the residing place, is the house. So, when this battle occurred, his father's dwelling was burned and he was forced to fly. So, his father has to flee from the city, he was forced to flee the Blenheim, and so with his wife and child he fled. So, he is telling about either himself or his, because he is telling about his father, and his father's child will be either Caspar or some Caspar's brother or sister. So, his father flee from there with his wife, means Caspar's mother, and now had he where to rest his head, nor had he where to rest his head, and he got no place to rest, he had to flee the city also. So, Caspar family was also the victim of Battle of Blenheim. So, he has suffered from this battle, and when he has also told that when I go to the fields, with my plowshare I plow skulls from the ground. This means, what does this indicate? This indicate that numerous people also were victim of this battle. So, Caspar was the victim also, Caspar's family was the victim also, he has suffered also, the other people have suffered also, but still, and he do not know the reason that why this war occurred, but still he is saying that was a great victory. Continuously in each stanza he is repeating that was a great victory, because he has heard from the people that was a great victory. His brain has been washed by the state, by the propaganda of the state. With fire and sword the country round, what wasted far and side. Now, he is telling much more about the suffering. With fire and with sword the country was rooted out and was wasted far and wide. So, there was a far and wide devastation, destruction all over the country. And now, see, many a children and mother then, and newborn baby died. Who died in the war? Newborn baby, mother, children who have nothing to do with war. So, who are the victims of the war? Newborn babies, mothers, children's. So, it is an anti-war poem. That is why the poet is emphasizing who is dying in the war. He is not telling that soldiers are dying, he is telling that babies are dying, mother is dying, unborn baby, newborn baby is dying. But things like that, must be at every famous victory. Again Caspar says, no matter newborn baby died, no matter mothers died, no matter children died, but in a famous victory these type of things occurs. Why? Because he has heard from some people that was a famous victory. So, again he is saying that was a famous victory. Still Caspar do not dare to say that that battle was wrong. He was supporting that battle and saying that was a great battle. So, he was unable to criticize the battle. Caspar do not have any words that he can explain to his grandchildren that historical wrong was there. So, he just used to repeat the things, repeat the line again and again, that was a famous victory. So, he did not have a dare to say that that battle was wrong. So, they say it was a shocking sight after the field was won, and Caspar is again explaining that what happened after Blenheim. When the field was won, when the battle was won, what occurred? For many thousand bodies here lay rotting in the sun. When the war was being won, what was happening there? Many thousand bodies were rotting, because the bodies of dead soldiers were rotting and the citizens were rotting over there. But things like that, must be after a famous victory. Now, again in the last stanza and this stanza, there is irony. He is saying things like this happen after a famous victory, and before this he is saying newborn babies are dying, children are dying, mother are dying, and after this stanza in the last line it is saying, he is saying that it happens in the famous victory, but he is saying that thousands of bodies are lying in the ground and they are rotten bodies. So, this is a contrasting situation, and obviously when there is a contrast, it is an ironical situation, because the famous is something, should be something beautiful, but the famous victory is not beautiful, it is full of death, it is full of devastation. So, great praise the Duke of Marlborough won. Now, Caspar said that there was a great praise for the victor, and who was the victor? One of the famous generals, Duke of Marlborough, and our good Prince Eugene. So, there was another Austrian general, Prince Eugene. So, Caspar takes his name, that the battle was won by whom? The battle was won by Duke of Marlborough and Prince Eugene. Why? Toss was a very wicked thing. Now, the grandchildren argued. Caspar do not dare to say that was a wicked thing. The grandchildren says that was a very wicked thing, because they have a fresh mind, their minds are not washed. So, nay, 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 my little girl. Caspar says, no, 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 my little girl. Quoth he, spoke he, it was a famous victory. So, Caspar still is not convinced that this death and devastation is not justified. He thinks that they are the parts of the famous victory, and the children who are able to think independently and the children who are able to think rationally, they are saying that was a very wicked thing. And everybody praised the Duke, who this fight did won. So, Caspar again said that when this fight was won by Duke of Marlborough and Prince Eugene, everybody used to praise them, no matter the thousands of bodies were lying, no matter that children and the newborn babies and the women were died, and the bodies were being rotten over here and there, and even the Caspar family has to flee from that place. So, Caspar says that are all the parts of the famous victory. So, he said that everybody praised the Duke and who won this great fight, but what good came it last, quoth little Peterkin. Now, Peterkin raised a question. So, what good is there at last? What good came from that battle? So, anything is there that you can quote, that you can tell us? So, what good is there? But that I cannot tell, said he, but it was a famous victory. Caspar replied, I cannot tell what good it was, what was good in that battle, but I know only one thing, that was a famous victory. Now, after every stanza, in the last 6 stanzas, Casper has repeatedly said that was a famous victory, was a famous victory, after a famous victory. So, there is one more irony in this. The grandchildren took expectant by, they are thinking that their grandfather is wise enough and he will tell why, because they raised the question from the grandfather that he will tell that why was this battle held and what good it make out. But after that the grandfather was unable to tell that why did they fought for and what good the battle uh, brought for anyone. So, they think that their grandfather is wise enough, but Casper is not wise enough to tell their grandchildren that nothing was brought from the war, and people say it was a famous victory because their mind is being brainwashed by the propaganda of the state. They are unable to think rationally. They do not know that they are the victims of the war and they do not understand even their human dignity. So, that is what the poet Southey, Robert Southey, tried to communicate with this narration that is being held between the grandchildren Wilhelmine and Peterkin and the old man Casper. So, this all is ironical and contrasting, and it brings the pity of war in front of an reader, that the war is good for nothing, war is useless, and whenever there is a war, there is a loss of people, there is a loss of human life, there is a loss war and fight far and wide. So, this is what the poet tried to communicate. So, thank you for listening.